In 2023, China found itself at the center of a technological maelstrom, having spent an eye-popping $2.6 billion on lithography equipment from ASML. However, the geopolitical tectonic plates shifted, and U.S. pressure led the Dutch government to revoke crucial export licenses. This left $15 billion worth of machinery in China effectively useless, akin to buying a brand new luxury car only to discover it's missing the engine. In a display of resilience, China responded not with retaliation, but with a strategic pivot. It announced plans to sever ties with ASML from the Netherlands and TSMC from Taiwan, signifying not just a breakup, but an irrevocable divorce. This drastic measure was not an impulsive decision. Since 2022, China had been preparing for such a scenario, strategically investing over $75 billion into its domestic semiconductor industry. This was not merely about money, it was about acquiring talent, with China recruiting over 50,000 engineers from giants like Huawei and even Silicon Valley returnees. In a move that stunned global observers, China managed to localize its chip supply chain, reaching 60 to 70% self-sufficiency in just 3 years, a feat many thought would take a decade. China's technological stride was exemplified by the Shenzhen-based SAR, which developed its own DUV lithography technology. This allowed China to manufacture chips under 7 nanometers, previously thought impossible without the holy grail of EUV technology from ASML. The Huawei Mate 60 Pro, with its 7-nanometer chip, was a testament to China's burgeoning capabilities, leaving tech pundits worldwide agog. SMIC, another Chinese juggernaut, announced it was testing 5-nanometer chips with ambitions to push towards 3 nanometers, utilizing AI-powered yield optimization and quad patterning techniques. This wasn't just about keeping pace. It was about setting a new standard. The ripples of China's technological leap were felt globally, particularly in Europe, where ASML reported a 27% revenue drop in Q4 of 2024 after China ceased its purchases. But this conflict transcends silicon. China began offloading U.S. government bonds and divesting from major U.S. tech stocks like Apple and Nvidia. What began as a chip war morphed into a full-fledged currency war with global implications. Should Beijing succeed in destabilizing markets, the reverberations could be severe. Mortgage rates in the U.S. could soar, tech stocks might nosedive, and retirement funds could shrink dramatically. It's a high-stakes poker game where the stakes are not mere chips, but the economic stability of millions. Amidst this turmoil, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tried to assuage fears, but her efforts were akin to putting out a forest fire with a garden hose. Instead of clarity, she offered deflection, blaming Elon Musk and Peter Navarro for the tariff debacle. In a public spat reminiscent of a schoolyard scuffle, Musk cheekily labeled Navarro as dumber than a sack of bricks, while Leavitt dismissed it with a nonchalant, "Boys will be boys." The economic landscape was compared to the infamous Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, brutal, bloody, and seemingly endless. Leavitt's assurances that American jobs would return home rang hollow to industries already grappling with skyrocketing production costs and disrupted supply chains. Agricultural states like Iowa, which exported $13.5 billion of produce in 2023, feared the ripple effects on equipment and fertilizer prices. The economic pain, contrary to Leavitt's assurances, was palpable. Prices climbed, supply chains frayed, and in the end, it was the consumer who bore the brunt. The narrative that America could thrive independently of other nations was as believable as a politician's promise to cut taxes while increasing spending. It sounds great, but the math just doesn't add up. Jobs, contrary to optimistic forecasts, were not returning in droves. Many American companies chose to relocate to India or Mexico to sidestep tariffs, with Moody's Analytics estimating a loss of over 300,000 potential jobs due to the trade war. The mantra that prices would drop on day one of policy implementation was as elusive as finding a unicorn in one's backyard. President Trump's tariff policy, with its baffling calculation formula, left even his staunchest supporters scratching their heads. Ken Langone, a major donor and Home Depot founder, derisively called it completely irrational. Trump's formula, exports minus imports divided by imports, was as opaque as trying to calculate your weight by measuring your shadow. In a humorous critique, John Oliver likened the formula to figuring out the square footage of your home by dividing your phone number by your dog's age. It's a calculation as useful as predicting the weather based on how many times your cat meows in an hour. The confusion wasn't just comedic, it was costly with hundreds of billions of dollars at stake. Across the northern border, Canada found itself embroiled in an unprecedented trade war, imposing a 25% tariff on U.S. cars and auto parts not sourced from North America. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's declaration was a clear signal of defiance against U.S. manipulation. Tourism from Canada to the U.S. plummeted, and a burgeoning Buy Canada movement urged citizens to prioritize domestic products over American imports. Globally, nations from Europe to South America began reassessing their ties with the U.S., using Canada as a blueprint for standing up to Trump's trade impositions. Carney's stance was a call to action, advocating for economic independence and diversification of trade partners. This shift wasn't just economic, it was strategic, especially in sectors like energy, technology, and defense. Canada's reconsideration of a $19 billion deal to purchase F-35 jets from the U.S. was a bold statement of intent. By opting to buy only the first 16 jets, Canada signaled a willingness to seek more reliable defense partners. This was not merely a reaction to trade policies, but a redefinition of national defense strategy. Meanwhile, Portugal joined the fray, announcing its own cancellation of F-35 purchases over concerns about Trump's policies harming NATO. This growing international resistance underscored America's increasing isolation, as both the EU and NATO members distanced themselves from Trump's unilateralism. Prime Minister Carney's rhetoric was resolute. Canada would not be intimidated by U.S. pressure. The country's newfound independence was not without cost, but it was a price Canadians were willing to pay. As Carney put it, in a trade war, just like in hockey, we will win. Canada was no longer content to play second fiddle, determined to protect its national interests and seek new partnerships. The MAGA spirit, once about making America great, seemed more about making America flip upside down. Caroline Leavitt's quip about China's need to call first for a deal only highlighted the administration's convoluted strategy. Leavitt's assertion that a 104% tariff on China was in retaliation for unspecified actions belied the economic chaos it unleashed, wiping out trillions from the market in mere hours. Elon Musk publicly opposed Trump's tariff policies, while trade advisor Peter Navarro remained steadfast in his support. This internal discord only added to the confusion, with Leavitt reducing the tension to mere "boys will be boys" rhetoric. As if the country wasn't already grappling with a crisis, the administration's flippant remarks were the proverbial salt in the wound. Beyond tariffs, Leavitt's explanation of the immigrant deportation policy, which included absurd ideas like deporting U.S. citizens to El Salvador, was met with public and expert outrage. This policy, rooted in the Alien Enemies Act, faced strong opposition for its disregard of legal standards and its polarizing impact on society. Higher tariffs meant higher prices for imported goods from China, translating to increased costs for everyday Americans. The promise of cheaper products was a mirage, and families felt the pinch as their grocery bills soared. The disconnect between promises and reality was stark, and Trump's approval ratings reflected this growing discontent. Internationally, the European Union expressed its ire over Trump's trade war, particularly in the automotive and consumer goods sectors. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called for an emergency meeting, and Canada vowed to retaliate against U.S. tariffs. Trump's transformation from a best friend to a global adversary was swift and self-destructive. Amidst the chaos, comedian Jamie Foxx sparked an internet sensation with his uncanny impression of Trump. His portrayal was so spot on that it left audiences both in stitches and in awe. Fox's viral moment highlighted the power of humor in critiquing political figures, as his impression spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The internet reveled in Fox's portrayal, with memes and parody videos proliferating. Trump's reaction, predictably, was a flurry of angry tweets, inadvertently amplifying the joke. It was a textbook case of the Streisand effect. The more Trump tried to suppress the humor, the larger it loomed. As Trump grappled with the fallout, Fox's impression became a cultural touchstone, a comedic yet poignant critique of the administration's approach to governance. The internet's response was a testament to the power of satire in shaping public discourse and holding leaders accountable. In the midst of this, Canada announced a $760 billion retaliatory plan against Trump's tariffs. This move underscored the country's resolve to counter American economic aggression. Canadian businesses, from small shops to large supermarkets, rallied to boycott American products, turning instead to local and European alternatives. Canada's strategic pivot extended to energy exports, as it leveraged its oil and gas resources in negotiations with Asian countries. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion facilitated increased exports to Japan and South Korea, reducing dependence on the U.S. market and enhancing Canada's economic independence. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's approval ratings soared as a wave of nationalism swept the country. Canadians, historically known for their peaceful demeanor, united in defense of their sovereignty. The shift in Canada's economic strategy promised long-term benefits, positioning the nation as a more independent player on the global stage. As relations between North America frayed, Canada's diversification of trade partners promised to reshape the geopolitical landscape. The U.S.'s once dominant position was challenged, and Canada emerged as a model for strategic independence in an interconnected world. Internationally, the repercussions of Trump's policies were felt far and wide. Countries that once relied on American leadership began seeking alternative alliances, diminishing the U.S.'s influence. The trade war, initially an economic conflict, evolved into a broader geopolitical realignment, with nations reevaluating their global partnerships. In this new world order, the U.S. faced the challenge of recalibrating its approach to international relations. The era of unilateralism gave way to a multipolar reality, where cooperation and compromise became the currencies of diplomacy. As the dust settled, one question loomed large. Could the U.S. and its allies navigate this new landscape and restore the cooperative spirit that once defined their relationships? The answer remains uncertain, but the stakes have never been higher. And there you have it, a deep dive into the complexities of modern geopolitics and the intricate dance of international relations. If you've enjoyed this analysis and want to stay informed on global developments, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you see these changes affecting the future of international trade? We'd love to hear your perspective.